Everyone, if all of you are interested in having just a fun session on food, can you come to the front, please? So whoever is interested in understanding food history a little bit in detail, so please come to the front. Yeah, okay. So am I audible to everybody behind? Yeah, you can hear me. So I do this particular area called culinary anthropologist. What is culinary anthropology? So culinary anthropology is basically the study which does not require accuracy. So historians search for accuracy. So I don't look for accuracy in terms of my research. I compare what people eat in different places, what she mentioned, or what we had an earlier session where, the chef who does sadhya, he mentioned about Vasco da Gama and the story of Puttu, which is an absolute rubbish in terms of anthropology. See, such kind of stories cannot be validated. So these kind of stories are just added in terms of being, talked about as stories, not as historical validations. So in terms of historical validation, let me tell you a funny story. I mean, like the best or the worst thing that everybody does is to understand food history. You cannot look into restaurant menus. So, in restaurant menus, you will find stuff like fish moli, and then there will be a story of some moli chechi having made that mean curry for the saip, and then having added coconut milk to lighten it. If you look at it right now, it's a little absurd that most of the chefs who represent Kerala cuisine outside of Kerala has the same stories to give people, which is actually not validated. So in terms of my research, let me tell you that this story is, I've actually done a little bit of myth busting. So this story comes from Lusophone gastronomy. So Lusophone gastronomy is the gastronomy of the Portuguese. Now, a lot of you must have, we all are aware of Kerala's history or India's history begins long before Vasco da Gama actually landed in Calicut or Kapad. It's disputed now. It could be Ponani for some reason. Uh, but then, when you look at it, people talk about history that is recorded by the British. So the British were our last colonizer. We had two previous colonizers before the British. One is the Dutch and the other is the Portuguese. So what you cannot find in what the British have documented, you need to look into what the Dutch have documented. And then again, you need to look into what the Portuguese have documented. Because this gives you an account. A lot of travelers have written a lot of things. If everybody has studied in CBSE schools or in Kerala syllabus, till the 7th standard, we all follow the same system of history. So we all study NCRT books or something related to it. So in that history, you will never find much mention about Kerala as much because the British never ruled most parts of Kerala. So, it was only the Malabar region, Calicut, and certain areas that was under the British. Kochi was a kingdom, and Travancore was another kingdom. Because when India became independent in 1947, so the kingdom of Kochi was the first kingdom to join the Union of India. So we were independent kingdoms, so princely states at that time. So we never had so much of a struggle as much as British occupied, British colonized areas. We were working with the colonizer on the side. So that's how the history of Kochi is different, history of Travancore is different, history of Malabar is different. Now, when you talk about today, I mean, like, let me ask you a very simple question. You go to a restaurant, take the menu, and you see Syrian Christian food, and you see Malabar food. So that's my question, like say, what about the other communities? Only Syrian Christians have their own cuisine, and Malabar has its own cuisine. Now, if you talk about Malabar, again, going into what the Arabs called Malabar is from Kutch down to Kanyakumari. So that is Malabar, not the three districts today. So when you look at, like say for example, your Kodambuli that we use in every mean curry. So that's called Malabar tamarind or Garcinia. So why is it called Malabar tamarind? If it's restricted to Malabar, no. It's there throughout the western coast. So that's how the terminologies have changed. So that's why I said If I'm a historian, I will look for accuracy. So then I will not be able to call it a Malabar tamarind as such per se, but then yeah, it is. So every in terms of anthropology, we actually deal with a lot of history, a lot of people's account. So when you come to a place, I hail from this place called Fort Cochin. So we already have like 36 communities there inside around 2.5 square kilometers radius. So there's so many people to study already. So it's a study of people. So there's so many communities like the Kachi Memons don't make the same biryani as the other Mapla Muslims around, or you have the Arab influenced architecture there. So you can study a lot of things from our places. My place has a lot to research on, so that's why I started with Kochi's history, because it all began with the fact that my mom is here, so we eat vindalus at home. But we never get credited for a Cochin vindalu ever. So whenever there's a British narrative, it's always the Goan vindalu. So I've had this issue with the Portuguese history. The boat came to Kerala as well, dude. I mean, like, how can you just restrict it to Goa? So there's a lot of history behind, like say, what the Portuguese have contributed in terms of cuisine. Now you will find most of the dishes inside Syrian Christian. So that's the wrong classification that the British did, because you should understand that people started going to restaurants very lately. So the history of going to restaurants is maybe 100 years. And that was predominantly to serve the British aristocracy. So what the British wanted, it was basically that on the menu. So never understand your cuisine by looking into a restaurant menu. So always make sure that you do not look at restaurant menus and understand cuisine. Whenever you want to understand cuisine, you understand from the people. See, there is a difference in the terrain. You look at the topography of Kerala. Like I said, there is a wrongful implication on British recorded history. So it's either, Malabar or Syrian Christian. It's just religious divisions maybe for classification of cuisine, which is absolutely wrong. You look at the topography of Kerala. You look at the highlands, the midlands, and the coast or the lowlands. So the highlands are where you have the Western Ghats, and that is where the forests were cleared by the British, obviously. And then you have the lowlands, which is again plantations and very fertile areas. Then you come to the coast with alluvial soil, like you have this coastal soil. There is no fertile soil there. So we are all consumers in the coast. So coastal history is more to do with the maritime history of India. So when you look at how the Arabs, for example, like I told you, whatever we learn today as history is recorded by the British, which is wrong because that's catering to British aristocracy. You go behind, the Dutch did many things. They did not go about doing missionary work and converting people. They actually wanted to explore the interiors. And for example, the kind of research that they've done in terms of metallurgy to find out more, iron or steel, etc. That was, part of India's history. So if you just Google, for example, there's a steel called Woods, Wootz. Now, Woods in South India of the ancient times was known by the name Uruk or Uk. Okay, so Uruk is, in terms of Indian metallurgy, a significant crucible steel. Now, this is a contribution from the Iron Age. So that we go back a long way. So now when you look at it, you can't find woods because Buddhism happened in between. People gave up violence and nobody wanted to make swords. So this crucible steel called Uruk was exported from India. And it went on to become the conqueror of Europe in one way or the other, because Saladin, during the Crusades, he's from Syria. So he used a sword that was made with Uruk, which came from South India. Majorly from this area called Golconda, or it could have been Anuradhapura of that time, which is basically Sri Lanka. So when you look at how things have traveled from India and back, and the impact that India has, you cannot restrict your studies to British history. So when you look at the Dutch, you will find more things like this. See, one of the significant things that came out of this rediscovery of woods is achapam, what you eat every day. So achapam is made with an ach mold. So the other significance of the same mold is, the Dutch were always predominantly slave traders. So, branding irons were used for horses, for for Kafris or the African slaves who were traded, etc. during that time. So that the Dutch, when they wanted to go interior and explore more about India's metallurgy, they found out more iron products. And that's how all these arches started coming in. And then it started becoming useless that people started using it for cooking, obviously. So one of the major things is it's called a rose cookie, the achapam, because it resembles rose petals. And it's also a Scandinavian dish of origin, which became very more prominent during the Dutch period. But again, the stories behind why it became more prominent during the Dutch period is because they went about searching for woods. Because woods was banned by the British later. Tipu Sultan's sword is known to be made with woods. Now, when you say you pay more money for Japanese knives or Damascus knives, it all started from here. It all started from that high carbon percentage steel that was found in India. So you go back a lot more about India's, say, I think Paradam Nambudiri had mentioned about the rasams. We have like 6 rasams, which is basically sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, astringent. So these are the 6 tastes that are defined in Ayurveda. But when you go outside of India or when you go outside of this science, there is no definition like this. There is sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. So umami, for example, to make it simple, in terms of simple understanding, soy sauce is a big umami that you know. You know, it has a different distinctive taste. It's fermented, etc. In terms of umami from India, chaat masala, for example, is umami. Dried fish is umami, which we know. We have in our chamandis, chuttaracha chamandi, etc. So this umami is undefined. So in every other country, we have the advantage. Indians have the advantage. We have our tastes more defined than the rest of them. They search for this taste, and that's why they want to find out. They find out weird things like, you know, soy sauce or W sauce. Have you heard of W sauce? Worcester sauce. Now somebody wanted to add sambar in a British person, aristocrat, wanted to have, he added sambar here, and he couldn't distinguish what hing was, which is asafoetida. Okay, so he could not explain that taste to 2 scientists in England, that he had something in India and it had this very, very different umami that he wanted to make it. And they actually tried, by his explanation, they tried to mix anchovies and made a sauce, fermented. But the British person who had commissioned these guys, these scientists were called Leah and Perrins. So the British officer had said, no, it doesn't taste like that. So they just put it, you know, this shelved it. And after like around 6 months, it fermented to become what is the most difficult sauce to pronounce in the kitchen. For us chefs, it's W sauce, Worcestershire sauce. You know, Worcestershire or Worcestershire sauce. So we call it W sauce. The W sauce actually was an accidental creation when somebody wanted to, you know, replicate sambar. Again, so these are kind of the things, the stories that actually define our, you know, identity outside. That, you know, there is like, say, so much of distinct tastes that we are used to in Kerala or in any part of India, but it's not exactly what has been recorded by the colonial powers that ruled us. So that's why when you look at history, never look at a restaurant menu and understand history. And that is where anthropology comes in, where I actually study the history of people and what their habits have been. For example, we have had a drought or a famine in 1860s, which was a great famine, and that's how we started eating kappa. Now, you know the story, just Google the story. It's Sri Vishakam Tirunal in Travancore who actually imported this particular variant of tuber called Manihot esculente. If you want to study further, you can go to the Tuber Museum in Trivandrum. So you will find these records of different kappas that have been made hybrid variants after that. But you know, it's become a significant part right now in our diets. Like we are known for kappa. And then you have like something called a kandari, you know, bird's eye chili. So if you want to know that, that's something that came from Mexico. Now, chilies, for example, have this thing about, we call this in anthropology the Columbian exchange. Christopher Columbus, after finding America, found huge loads of food in the Amazon. Now that traveled around to the different parts of the world. Obviously, kappa is from Brazil. So it's come from there, it's gone to Africa, then it's come to India. Now there's so many of these things that we eat daily that's not from here. Especially if you're from Kochi, if you're from a coastal region in Kerala, most of the things that you consume would have come through the sea, and it's not farmed locally in your backyard, unlike the high ranges or in the midlands where everybody has a kappa krishi behind. So if you come here, you will find inclusions of, like, say for example, there is no vegetarian diet in Kochi. Like if you want to have beans, there'll be a little bit of shrimp inside. If you want to have something like a like say you pair it with all kinds of things you can think of. Probably gurka and chemmin is one thing that we eat. There's muringa kol. So all of these, like say there's these things that you find in your daily food. For example, if you look at how deeply our diets, it's like say earlier I started this question: is it only Syrian Christians and Malabar that has contributed to our cuisine? What about the sadhya, for example? Now sadhya is a balance. It's a way of life, the way we ate or our ancestors ate. But now we only eat it as a celebratory dish, which is for Vishu, Onam, or when somebody dies or gets married. So that's how we, like say, celebrate a way of life that we are used to. So we've actually moved ahead. Things are moving to a fast-paced environment. I don't know if Nambudri was unaware of the fact that we still have food supplements, which comes as tabs. People survive on it. Virat Kohli actually does. He just eats that instead of eating actual food sometimes. So yeah, you can actually, there is, like America is a country where you have GMO foods. Everything is genetically modified. That's why people have diseases like celiac diseases, which is like, say, people have this, intolerance to lactic acid and to gluten. So, when you have so much of, and again, America, for example, is one of the reasons why we eat porota today, So that is because in 1954, after the World War, now America being capitalist and finding more capitalist markets to flood their products, obviously they had this agrarian reform during the time of President Lyndon Johnson, and this agrarian reform exported surplus to third world countries or needy countries. And that's how they started bringing cartloads of maida, refined flour, because our technology here in terms of milling was not so refined. So we couldn't refine that one wheat germ into refined flour and wheat. We would do the whole wheat. That's why we had more chapatis, not parotas at that time. So it came in during the 60s, flooded the markets. My grandmother used to call it American body. So an American podi means maida, basically, literally. So you would find truckloads of American podi everywhere, flooding the markets in the 60s and the 70s. And by then, parota had become very popular as something that you can eat outside of a restaurant. Now, because restaurants, for example, catered to British aristocracy, it still does. And then there were these divisions like family room in restaurants. So you cannot go to restaurants basically if you are a person who is like say used to homely food. Nowadays when you go somewhere, like for example, you go to like say, let's take the case of one of the most successful restaurant chains in Kerala, Paragon. You take Paragon, and Paragon's food is modified to please the masses. For example, that's not how madam would cook at home, you know. That's not how people see. If you order a fish mango curry, for example, it's full of creamy coconut milk. Now that is not exactly how fish mango curry is made at homes. But if you ask Mr. Sumesh, who's Paragon's owner, he would tell you that is done so that people enjoy the dish. So that's how you are catering to a larger audience, not just your home audience. So that's why you can take such concepts forward. Like say when a Kerala restaurant actually makes its mark outside of Kerala, it's a big thing. It's a big deal because Kerala cuisine is never represented in global Indian narratives. It's always a marginalized narrative. When you find about when we go to any place, any executive chef doing anything at any of these five-star hotels, you will find a butter chicken in every menu. But that's not the case with all the dishes from Kerala. You would find a fish mole, yes, because again the British liked it. So that's why you would find a fish mole, but you would never find something like a fish mango curry. It's become popular now. Like for example, after Paragon started the trend, every variant of the fish mango curry, call it a mappas, call it nirvana, call it anything, it would be a variant from what we are used to eating in Kerala or in the western coast, because the western ghats define our diets. So throughout the western coast, you would find such dishes in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, and in Kerala. So it's not something that originated in Malabar of today. It originated in Malabar of what the Arabs called Malabar. The Arabs were the first travelers who navigated around India, went around India. If you look at it, they called the western side of India as Malabar, and they call the eastern side of India as Maabar. So you go to the eastern side of India, you will understand how the Cholas brought in a lot of stuff. For example, puttu. Puttu is a Southeast Asian dish. It's called pittu in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, every place. It's basically the pa ta. That's the words that come out for puttu. So it's changed from pa ta to it's pu ta pu to. That's in the Philippines. You come to Kerala, it's puttu. Because it's come through the Palakkad Gap. You know what the Palakkad Gap is? Now, Palakkad Gap is the space between Coimbatore to Palakkad. That is where there is a break in the Western Ghats. And that is where, people travel from Tamil Nadu to Kerala. And that is how most of the things have come in the earlier times. So puttu has come when bamboo steamers were introduced into India. And that is from Java, Indonesia. So if you look at there is a treatise on Indian history by K.T. Achaya, who's a historian. So I've looked at his work. So he has, he couldn't like properly date idli's history. But there is one history that he's brought in there, which is the introduction of bamboo steamers into India. So that was during the Cholas. We're talking about predating, like say around the early medieval times, so 1100s and all that stuff. So that during that time is when the Cholas brought in, because they usually got married to people in Southeast Asia, and there was a lot of cuisine exchange and overlap at that time. So they are the ones who brought in bamboo steamers, and that's how puttu happened, obviously. So puttu is from Southeast Asia, and now it's obviously something that we eat every day. So a lot of things like this that we eat every day has a history that we probably are connected to Mexico in terms of chilies that we use every day. But then again, chilies, we are not used to the Andhra kind of chilies. So chilies mutate wherever you plant them. So in Goa, you'll still find the hybrid variant of chili that came from Mexico. The Portuguese brought it. It's called cola, and it's only there in one of the slopes called Kankona in Goa. So these chilies are called gauti chilies. You go to a market in Goa instead of the beaches, and you find out a lot of stuff in the markets. So you will find this chili called gauti chilies. Most of the Goan curries have this very bright red color because of the gauti chilies, which is very small nadan chili in their lingo, which is gauti chili. So you will find these chilies called kola there. You know how it's mutated into different variants. You'll find the kandari here. You'll find the bird's eye chili here. You'll find the guntur, which is very spicy. You go to Nagaland, it's even more spicy as the booth chalokia. So every soil that the chili is been on has made a difference to the heat. And that's how we are used to only certain kind of heat and not the other kind of heat. It's like you ask me to, my spice tolerance levels do not allow Andhra Pradesh spiciness. It's Kerala spiciness because that's what I'm used to. So when you understand food history, always make sure that you don't go to restaurants and understand food history. You go to people, find their eating habits, and then understand your food history. You can ask me questions on a lot of things like this in terms of like stories. For example, let me give you a story since you're all young students and everybody probably knows who's Cristiano Ronaldo. So yeah, so what's the connection between Cristiano Ronaldo, Kannur, and Goa? obviously you can think of Portugal, right? So yeah, so the idea is, the story is, so Christian, so you in Kannur, for example, I find a lot of these Portuguese desserts have a different name. For example, muttamala. So muttamala is called egg garlands. If you go to Portugal, it's egg garlands. If you go to Japan, it's called kiran, soman, and there's different names for these egg-based desserts. Now, this happened when during the medieval times there was this island called Madeira that was found by the Portuguese. So after the Arabs left and the Portuguese, means during the Crusades, Portugal and Spain were Islamic countries, and after 1251 they became a country called Lusitania. So together, because they were very poor nations, they went out to find food, and that's how they found food and actually spread it to the world. So during those times, when new monasteries were being built, there was a monastery called the Monastery of Santa Clara in Madeira, which is where Ronaldo is born. So Madeira was known as the sugar bowl because the Arabs had planted sugarcane there. So when there was only sugar there, and these nuns in the monastery had vowed to poverty, so they cannot do anything to work and earn money, people would actually give them donations. So when big churches were being built and all this gold was being embossed, only egg whites were used. Egg yolks came as, extra, excess. So they would actually donate these egg yolks to the monastery. And the monastery, the nuns would find something out of egg yolks and sugar. And that's how monastic sweets happen. You will still find the bebinka in Goa. You will find the mottamala in Kerala. You will find the pastis di nata in Goa. A lot of these things came from this period when people became innovative, creative, and started using ingredients like yolk and sugar together and mixed it. So, that's the same place. Madeira was known as the sugar bowl. That's where Ronaldo is from. And your mottamala is also connected to Ronaldo in some way or the other. So, a lot of interesting stories that you'll find in anthropology. I wish I could talk for long and long and long, but I know she's here. But yeah, if you guys can follow me on Instagram as FCBoy83, I do this session called Community Mesha in Fort Kochi. So you can attend one of my sessions, and I do a demonstration of what we eat every day on a leaf. Anyways, thanks for being a nice audience. Cheers.
I seriously wish we could have also listened to you more, but thank you so much, and humbly requesting you to kindly stay back. And may I humbly request Dr. Lakshmi M, the respected head of the Department of Chemistry, to kindly do the honor of appreciating Mr. Oneal Sabu for such a wonderful session, and thank you so much once again. It was great listening to you. So can we all please join with me in letting us express our appreciation and respect for the great works and efforts he's putting in, bringing the anthropology on culinary. Thank you so much once again. And hoping to partner with you, hoping for more collaborations with Jain University from your side. Thank you so much.